I am the Executive Director of LkldNow, your online source for local news in Lakeland. And we are very pleased and proud to present this panel to you tonight. First of all, I actually have a question. How many here are teachers? Just curious. Awesome. How many here are parents? All right, yay, love it, love it. How many here are just, you know that education is important to the overall well-being of our community? Excellent. Well, we're so glad that you guys are here with us tonight. I think we've got a great panel for you. I want to say part of the reason why it takes a year to put these things together is one of the most difficult parts is actually narrowing down the panel and trying to get that great mix that we think can bring diverse perspectives into a really meaningful conversation. And so we think we've done that tonight, and we thank all of our panelists who are here freely donating their time and their expertise. Just as a matter of note and transparency, I want to say there was one more person that we would have loved to have been here with us tonight, that she would have loved to have been here as well, but had scheduling conflicts. But I just want to let you guys know that the invitation was extended to Representative Jennifer Kennedy. And part of the reason for that, and something that may come up tonight, is that so much of education policy is actually decided at the state level. And so we thought this panel is a little different. This is the first time for us we haven't had a sitting city commissioner on the panel, because we are focused on Lakeland, and that's usually, you know, one of the people that we always want to have involved in the conversation. But education tends to happen at the county level and then at the state level. So we've got a lot of people from the county up here, including 2 of our school board members, and of course Superintendent Heid. We would have also loved to have somebody from the state level as well, but unfortunately the schedules just didn't work out for that. But I don't want to take away any more time from our wonderful panel, and I want to turn it over to our moderator, which tonight is Lakeland's own Kimberly C. Moore. Kimberly has been with LkldNow for over a year, and before that she covered City Hall and education for that other newspaper of record in town, the one that covers the whole county. So with that, I'm going to return Mr. Heid's microphone, and we're going to turn it over to you.
Okay, good evening. Can you guys hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay. So I just wanted to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about me. I grew up here. I went to Medela, Lakeland Highlands Junior High. That's how old I am. It was a junior high. Kathleen High School, Polk Community College, and then Florida State University, even though I'm in blue this evening. Right after college, I moved to Israel, and I covered the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, as an anchor and a reporter there. I moved to D.C. and covered Congress and the White House, worked in Tallahassee a little bit, covered that little thing you might have heard of, Election 2000. And then I went into PR and worked for Habitat for Humanity for a little while. Moved to Brevard County. I moved around a lot. Moved to Brevard County, where I covered education. I covered the school district there for Florida Today newspaper. And I also covered the case of astronaut Lisa Nowak. And if I say the word diaper, all of you will go, oh, that case. Okay. And I taught art for 1 year at a rural, impoverished district in North Florida. And I had 600 students, every single child in that school. And then, as Trinity said, I worked at the Ledger starting in 2018, and then last year moved over to work for Barry, who Barry came to speak to my high school journalism class. He's right there in the white shirt, very studious on the audio board. So I'm probably preaching to the choir, but most of you know that Polk County Public Schools, it's one of the 30 largest school districts in the country, and it is the 7th largest in Florida. There are 117,000 students now, and about 150 schools. They employ 13,000 people in Polk County, Publix has finally surpassed them as the largest employer, but the school district is the second largest. So I want to introduce the panel. We'll start with Superintendent Heid all the way down on the end. Superintendent Heid was hired in April of 2021, and he was unanimously selected by the school board, two of whom are up here, to be our new superintendent. And he was one of dozens of candidates, and I want to say 50-something? 52? Yep. And he had a humble beginnings in education. In his third year in teaching in Sarasota County, he was named Teacher of the Year. And he's one of 2 Teachers of the Year up here. And he came to us from a school district in Illinois. Before that, he served as a bureau chief in the Florida Department of Education's School Improvement Office, and was the chief academic officer for Duval County Public Schools, that's Jacksonville. He is currently working on his doctorate in educational leadership, and it is on adverse childhood experiences, and he and I could sit up here and talk about that for about 2 hours, but we won't do that this evening. So he lives here with his wife, their teenage son, and his mom. They all share a house here. It takes a village. Lisa Miller is next in the pink. Lisa is serving in her second term representing District 7, which is North Lakeland. She received her bachelor's degree from the University of South Florida and her master's from Barry. She and her husband Bob own Millshire Realty. And Lisa spent time in advertising and public relations before she went into the classroom, and she taught in various elementary school grades. Her son Michael was born 20 years ago? 21 years ago. But he had significant developmental delays. He is nonverbal and profoundly autistic. And that is when Lisa found her calling, or it found her. She began working to improve the lives of all children with disabilities. Lisa's been appointed by the governor to several boards, including the Florida Development Disability Council. She, Bob, Michael, and their daughter Evie, because I can't leave Evie out, live in North Lakeland. And Miss Kay Fields. Miss Kay, if you don't know, is the longest serving school board member currently. She graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi and moved to Lakeland in 1978. She began her journey as a child care center director with the Agricultural and Labor Program in Fort Meade. In 1983, she became executive director of Girls Clubs, which is now known as Girls Inc. of Lakeland. And she serves as the president and CEO. And if you don't know what Girls Inc. is, it's a nonprofit that serves underprivileged girls in our community to help set them on a better path with after-school homework help, enrichment activities, and summer programs. And they run on donations to help these girls. In November of 2002, which seems like forever ago, she was elected to the Polk County School Board and is currently serving her 6th 4-year term. She and her husband Gal live in Lakeland. They have 3 children and a bonus daughter and 8 grandchildren. And Lois Horn-Diaz worked for 24 years as a school psychologist in Polk County, and then began working as a teacher of gifted students. And she did that for 10 years at R. Bruce Wagner Elementary. She was chosen as the 2017 Polk County Teacher of the Year and was awarded the Florida Association for Gifted Children Excellence in Creative Teaching Award. In 2018, she was named as a recipient of the Governor's Shine Award for Outstanding Teachers. So she retired from the traditional public school system in June of 21, but she is continuing her work at Mi Escuela Montessori Charter School in South Lakeland. It is a bilingual school. It is pre-K through
6th grade right now.
6th grade, okay. And she is currently also a doctoral candidate at Florida Southern College, where she also serves as an adjunct professor in the College of Education. And with that, we are going to go on to our first question. I would ask the panelists if you could limit your responses to like 3 to 5 minutes. That would be good. And if you have a point that you'd like to make on somebody else's question, feel free to pipe in. We like conversation. So, Mr. Heid, you get the real simple first question. The one thing that impacts everyone regarding education are property taxes. So let's talk about school funding, which is one of the most confusing things that I cover each year. If you could explain why we're not getting a whole lot more from the state and property taxes, even though we're adding houses like it's the 1920s, and why can't we use the money we do get to give all of our teachers a substantial raise?
Yes. So it is the Florida State University, by the way.
Oh.
Hey, we won. So there's several things. Unfortunately, and what most people don't realize in the state of Florida and even in our county is that we are the only local entity that cannot dictate our millage rate. The state of Florida enacted a law several years ago that actually ensures that the millage rate declines as property tax revenue increases. And so the result of that has been, and if you looked at the last school board meeting where we approved the new millage rate, it actually went down again. And as a result of that, and I understand, there is some rationale to the state's motivation there, not to stymie growth with high taxes, but the reality of it is that they should have put a threshold that it could not decline below a certain amount, because to date, we have lost over $400 million as a result of that. And so it does directly impact our ability to provide or address issues within our general budget and our capital budgets. And so it's not as simple as saying that those dollars could be easily applied to pay raises, and we wish they could. But we have been very aggressive over the last 2 years at negotiating and putting salary increases in for our staff. But that's the simple answer, that the state has a process in place where large districts like our own that are growing quickly and generating additional property tax revenue actually see less of those dollars coming back to us. Part of that is part of the overall state calculation and how they disperse funds in the FAFP model adequately, where certain school districts, for every dollar they input, they may only get back 80 cents on the dollar. We happen to be one of those districts. And Polk County, amongst the state of Florida, is one of the lowest funded counties in the state. And it's unfortunate because we continue to see our enrollment increase. As you mentioned, we grew almost 8,000 students last year. So that's my short answer.
So, and for those who don't know, we get federal funding, state funding, and then Polk County has to contribute something called the required local effort. But those different funding sources can only be used for certain things. Some of it can only be used for building schools. Some of it has to be used for special education students. And you can't shift money around, and it gets very frustrating. I watch the school board members make some really difficult decisions on how to spend money. So, Miss Fields, you are next. You have been on the school board for 20 years. You've dedicated your life to helping students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Test scores have long shown that impoverished students continue to lag behind their more affluent peers. I looked up some numbers today. In 2017-2018, which was the last year I could find, 26% of Polk County's economically disadvantaged students passed the reading portion of the state test. And overall in Polk County, 47% of students passed. So they're very far behind. Why do you think this is, and what would you like to see done to bring up those scores?
Well, one of the things I think is some students don't do well on tests, And I don't think that you can really define whether or not a child is learning on one specific thing. And I think that that has been emphasized much too much. Now, should kids be tested? Yes, but there should be other ways to measure whether or not they are academically improving. And then one of the things that I think that is very troubling, because of the decline that we're seeing in our academics, it's implied that our teachers and our paras and our therapists and all of the staff that make sure that our kids are served the best that they can, that they aren't doing their job, that they aren't real teachers. And that really frustrates me, because they are real teachers. The teachers do the best that they can do based on who come into their classroom. They don't define who comes into their classroom. Their parents and the students' parents send the best that they have. It's the best. I think a lot of it has to do with making sure that the parents are educated and they know the resources that's available to them. I think a lot of it has to do with making sure that the students feel like they're valued and that they are loved, and everyone that's involved with the teaching of the students understand that they can learn. There isn't any barriers, but they have to have the resources in place. A lot of the kids haven't even been in pre-K or Head Start. So they immediately come from home into a classroom with no skills. Some don't even have social skills, so you're looking at that. And then some of the kids are struggling in the classroom. They need, to me, extended tutoring, more resources available to them. And then some of the parents are not able to afford the high-speed internet and technology. I find that a lot at Girls Inc. We think everybody has a computer. They don't. Only if they have the use of the school district. We think that every parent know how to use the portal. They don't. So finding ways that we can help educate our parents, educate our students, and make sure that they have the resources in place to be the very best that they can be. But to say that a child is not learning academically because of one test, to me, is just very flawless, and it's not fair to the students, it's not fair to the staff, all of the educators, everybody, those 13,000 folks that you talked about. It's not fair to them, it's not fair to our community, and it makes public education look like we are not doing our job, which is a disservice to everybody.
Ms. Miller, you have been an advocate for special needs children for nearly 20 years. What have you seen change in that time? What is the district doing to help our special education students? I've done some reports, and you guys have hired an outside, investigative team to look at it, and it has shown in the past that students were not getting services.
How long do we have? No. I'm going to start with, yes, it's been about 17 years involved in the district, and I want to put a plug in for people who don't understand the funding. IDEA was the law that was passed in the 70s that said these kids have the right to go to school. Before that law, they were turned away. They were known as closet kids. You weren't allowed to take your children to school with significant disabilities or with disabilities that the schools could not meet. But when that law was passed, the federal government was supposed to pay 40%, they were supposed to fund 40% to the states to ensure those supports were there. It's never funded over about 16%. It currently sits at about 14%. So the funding from the federal level has never been sufficient. And what's happened, the unintended consequence of school choice is that sometimes, and I'm a parent of school choice child, but sometimes the students who need the highest level of need are who are left in your public schools. And so over the last almost 2 decades, I was around for the first report that community advocates like myself pushed to have done. And then as I was coming on the board, they were doing another report on services, and a lot of it was still the same. Some students' needs still weren't being met. And I want to describe so you make sure to understand the range of needs. We have students. Our gifted students are under the umbrella of ESC, so you have very high-functioning students funded with the same source, all the way down to hospital homebound or our medical units that have students on feeding tubes in the classroom. And everybody in between, from speech therapy, OT, PT. So it's a huge range. And I think we've seen kind of a wave of results from services here in the district. I think we have to start doing things like we've never done before to meet the needs, because to truly see success, if you're basing it on the outcomes, how many of our kids are going to be employed and gainfully employed? At the time, Governor Scott put a lot of money into that initiative to get kids gainfully employed, to get them off the Medicaid system. And we have a lot of students that can be. You saw them get rid of the special diploma because students who were very much aware and capable of getting a high school diploma were given a piece of paper saying they went to school. They couldn't go into the military. For the ones that were super high functioning, that was not even an option. And it was hard for them to get employment because they did not have a high school diploma. So you saw a pendulum swing, and in that, it helped the higher functioning students, but the students with the most significant needs now sit for a test. I took my son out of public school, he's in a homeschool program, because he was made to sit for a test where he punched himself in the head while they asked the question, had to wait 10 seconds, write no response, and turn the page. So sometimes with legislation you see those pendulum swings, and we need to start having that conversation to bring it back to the middle, because it's about outcomes. So it's a funding issue and it's a support issue, and we have taken a look at that as a district twice now. And as laws change and as legislation has changed, it kind of makes it more difficult because things move around on what we have to do, what we're required to do. The one area that I think we are putting an initiative in, and I think is so important, is in transition. Kids with disabilities go to school until they're 22 years old. And we've got to make more of a community connection to have them employed, or at least seeking employability skills. So I think we are making some increases in that, but we have a long way to go. And you'll see when these kids are employed, the community, you'll break the circle of poverty with employment. And so that's my goal, to make sure that every child can be employed, will be, and if they're not gainfully employed, they have community and they have a way to volunteer and be in our community. So I think we could talk for hours, but I think we've seen improvements. Sometimes I think we go 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, but that's a lot in education.
I don't want to interrupt any of you, but for everyone who's watching on the live stream, don't be afraid to eat the microphone. The sound in the room is good, but we want to make sure everybody who's watching can hear.
I'm so sad they missed all that.
All right, Lois, as a veteran teacher, describe what you were able to do when you started that you can't do now. And what do you have to do now that you didn't back then?
Well, thank you for that question, because that's a great topic to start on today. First of all, let me say that when I started in education as a school psychologist, I was not in a classroom, but I had the privilege of visiting many, many classrooms. And what I saw in those, what I call the golden years of education, just amazing things being done by amazing teachers. I saw a variety of activities that seemed to reflect the needs of the students in the classroom and the abilities and talents of the teachers standing in front of that room. What I saw in room A was different than what I saw in room B and room C, but each environment was meeting the needs of students. That is probably the thing that I regret most through my journey in education, is to see the loss of that variety. You know, I've been very vocal on asking that teachers be given their academic freedom. And that's a basis for our education system. Yes? And usually I speak from the perspective of the teacher, right? Give that freedom back to the teachers. Teachers are highly trained. They get certified. They have to take a test to prove that they've mastered the skills and the knowledge. They're given their certification, their professional certification, but yet they're not able to operate as a professional. They're treated as if they were interns being supervised by a system. So that's just wrong. But you know what? Today, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk from the perspective of the teacher. I want to talk from the perspective of the child, because it is the child that is missing out. You know, K-12 education I like to envision as a tapestry. So each child, when they leave the schoolhouse door, their tapestry should have a variety of colors, textures, shapes, and each part of that tapestry is woven by a different educator. If we standardize the entire system so that everybody is doing things the same way, the same time, at the same moment, we have lost the diversity in that beautiful tapestry. So yes, the teacher is suffering, but the one who's really losing is the child. So I don't know what we can do about that. Mr. Heid is here, but he's with us in Polk County. I think most of these directives are coming down from a higher office. And if we don't speak up and let our people in Tallahassee know that we're not happy with the system. And here's the irony. All of the standardization, what has it done for us? Are test scores improving? So if we're using a system that demands conformity and it's not getting results, what does that tell us about data-driven decisions, right? We're not following the data. This is not working. Can we have standards? Of course we should have standards. But if we decide and we agree that there's a set of standards for each grade level, why can't our professional teachers make the decision of how to meet those standards? And I know that I have heard the concern is that if teacher A is doing these awesome things, then teacher B is not. All the mamas are going to be calling the office wondering why their child can't be in teacher A's classroom. So the solution, quote unquote, is to put everybody in a room and do collaborative planning. Now, collaboration is a beautiful thing, and I think authentic, spontaneous collaboration is what we should be doing. But the forced collaboration, in my humble opinion, is not raising the bar for teachers that are not likely to do innovative things. What it's doing is lowering the bar to the level that all teachers are able to participate. So what is my solution? My solution is, if you have a teacher who has demonstrated mastery, you leave that teacher alone. If you have a teacher that for whatever reason is not up to the challenge, put things in place to support that teacher. Perhaps that teacher needs someone looking over their shoulders, but to do it across the board is insanity. I think my time's up.
Mr. Heid, behavior has long been an issue in schools. I know you've hired some truancy officers to deal with absenteeism, which I didn't realize until you said it was such a huge problem here. After the shooting at Parkland, at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, the state legislature mandated a lot of hiring of a lot of mental health counselors. Are we seeing any results?
No, you're not seeing the results for several reasons. Number one, there aren't enough mental health, licensed behavioral or mental health counselors in the state of Florida to adequately meet the need. And if that weren't the case, you wouldn't see every single entity in Polk County unifying around one common theme right now, and that's mental health. From the sheriff's office to Polk Vision to the Department of Health to school district, the reality of it is has nothing to do with COVID. COVID probably exacerbated it slightly, but mental health issues have plagued our society for a very long time. And because of the lingering stigma behind mental health, it's largely been hidden, and it hasn't really been addressed. And so we end up labeling students. We have far too many students who have an IEP or a 504 that, quite frankly, may not have had that. There's absolutely, the data supports that there's an overrepresentation of students, except those with specific disabilities, that are being treated for issues or being serviced for issues and not receiving the appropriate level of service. Mental health counselors for here in Polk County, we offer a multitude of opportunities for our students and families. We brought Hazel Healthcare in several years ago, and we've seen incredible results on the physical health side. We've not seen enough utilization on the mental health side. The referrals are just now starting to pick up again, because that's a good preliminary step prior to a student being evaluated for additional mental health services. They can see students for up to 5 visits, and then they can actually make a referral. If the student needs a referral sooner than that because they're truly in crisis, they have the ability to connect them to a local agency that allows that to happen. If you were to go out right now in Polk County and almost everywhere in the United States, unless you are actually truly in crisis, the wait time for an appointment can be 6 months. And that's just for a preliminary visit. And the cost and the affordability is far beyond the reach of many of our families. That's why we partnered with a company like Hazel. That's why we partner, and the school board just approved a new contract with one of our local hospitals in Winter Haven. And those are school-based services. And I think that oftentimes gets overlooked with mental health. If we were to solely rely on outsourcing students to be seen after school, the utilization would be less than 30%. Why? Because parents are still working. They have difficulty in transportation. There's a reluctance to attend. And I will say this, I will disclose a personal narrative. Safe space. It's being broadcast. Everybody and their mother will know about this. At one point in my life, I needed some counseling. And I was in a position of authority in a school district. And this is how fearful I was to seek assistance. I looked up every single mental health provider that was provided to us through EAP, our Employee Assistance Program, and I went into the computer system to make sure none of them were parents in my school district. I was that concerned that they, no matter what you say about ethics and confidentiality, that somehow it would be disclosed that I had to go for talk therapy, not behavioral therapy, contrary to what my wife and my mother may think. But at the end of the day, I was even worried about getting out of the car and being seen walking across the parking lot to enter that facility because it was a shared complex. So if that's my position, I'm an educator, I'm well educated, I have a long career, I've been successful, but if I'm fearful to seek out mental health, imagine what this means for everyone else. Look at the utilization of our employee assistance programs in every single employer in Polk County. It's abysmally low. It's not representative of the true need that's out there, and it's fear that drives that. And so when we talk about whether or not mental health counseling has really had the impact that we need it to, there's no accurate measure of that right now, because we're still seeing chronic absenteeism, which can be a direct result of mental health issues or behavioral issues. We're still seeing low academic attainment. We're seeing low-level engagement. And so those are realities. So we don't have enough of the leading and lagging indicators at this time that I can confidently say that's having an impact. I also know that we have far too many vacancies, and we end up contracting out a lot of these services, and it's become so difficult to find them that we're now reliant, instead of in-person therapy, we're becoming increasingly reliant on teletherapy. And while it's beneficial for some, there is a missing narrative or a missing aspect of that when you don't have the face-to-face opportunity, because you can't pick up on body language. You can't pick up, your therapist picks up on those things. And so, again, I shared my personal story. I am who I am. I'm better for it. But I think people need to realize there's still a very significant stigma that exists surrounding those issues. And we all, at some point in our lives, need that person we can talk to in a safe space. And I would hope that more people become receptive of it, including our families. I think sometimes they are reluctant to participate because what are my neighbors going to think? Are we now weaker than, is my child weaker than their child? There's so much competition out there now and so much pressure. And think about the environment our kids are being raised in. They're dealing with issues that we never faced. The worst thing that could happen to you when I was a kid is you were passing a note and somebody else got hold of it and the teacher read it aloud. That was the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
Now, the whole world gets it. Because I posted on Snapchat or I posted on Instagram and somebody else takes a screenshot of it. Well, it's supposed to disappear. Well, no, because somebody took a screenshot of it and it lingers and persists forever. And our children are not prepared for that. They're being exposed to content online that they never are prepared for. And we're not regulating that. We're not monitoring that at large. And that's having an impact on students and their mental health. So it's a very complex problem. I went well beyond your question, but I think I took up my 3 minutes.
If I could add, please.
Sure.
I've been on the school board, as you said, 20 years or better, and I don't think that I've seen as many cases of contemplated suicides or suicides. My young people, it's very sad. And trying to find ways to help the kids and to help their families to understand what resources are available, as Superintendent Heid just referenced. And beyond that, what I find is that the younger generation, they are more apt to receiving help. And when I say the younger generation, I'm talking about the 20-year-olds, maybe the 20 to 35 or 40-year-olds. They're more apt to say, yeah, I need a therapist. But then as we get older, as Superintendent Heid said, we don't want to sometimes admit that we need help, and we really do. And so as parents, if you are listening, if you see anything that doesn't even look right, it doesn't feel right, you know your child. You should know your child better than anybody else. You need to make sure that you seek help for them. And there are many, many resources available, even outside of the school district. Just call, I'm sure there are numbers that they can call. They can even call Superintendent Heid.
Yes, ma'am.
They can call any of us, and we would direct them as best we can.
I'd like to add something. Sure. I also want to add that, prevention is important as well. And back in the day, there was more of an emphasis on proactive attempts in elementary, middle, and high school, especially at the elementary level, where the guidance counselors did lessons in classrooms to address these things on the front end, and that has virtually been eliminated. Why? Probably because and as a school psychologist, I used to go into classrooms and do lessons about self-esteem and empathy and bullying and all kinds of topics, but that got eliminated because it was a waste of, say it with me, instructional time. So until we prioritize some of these other important elements, we're going to keep trying to deal with it on the back end instead of getting it, prevention.
So I did a series, if you didn't read it, it was in the Ledger a couple of years ago, about mental health in Polk County. And it's, I'll whisper this, it's free. It's not behind the paywall. But the statistic that I saw that, I actually got tears in my eyes, in Polk County, 1 in 5 students may have attempted suicide. 1 in 5, that's 20% of, at the time, 110,000 students. So if your child needs help, please ask. Okay, Ms. Miller. The nation, state, and Polk are in the midst of a dire teacher shortage. Why is this happening, and what is Polk County doing about it?
Don't get that, Barry. That's a long answer. It depends who you talk to. So nationwide, the first thing people think of is money. And I think that we saw that here, and what happened with how the money came down from Tallahassee was that we gave a big increase to first-year teachers. What that caused was compression. So my teachers in the classroom, 8 to 10 years, making what their peer makes walking through the door. In corporate America, that's done. It happened to my own mother at State Farm. She was training college kids to make more than her. But in the education world, it's not that we have the way we used to pay in steps is what people knew and what they expected for all these years. And so you saw a lot of our veteran teachers just become disgruntled in what they saw with the payment. But if you talk to a teacher, very rarely does somebody say, I'm leaving because I don't get paid enough money. It's not what they're saying. They're leaving because they don't feel supported. They're leaving because of behavior issues in the classroom. It's a support level. They're leaving for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do really because, as we all know, going into any kind of, even social work, any of the social services or education, they'll tell you in the classroom, you're going into this, we know, with a heart because you're not going to make any money, right? And so I know that people go into it, even if they get discouraged in maybe not performing as they were you know, when they started 20 years ago. They go into it to help kids. And I think people are leaving overall because they don't feel valued. We don't have kids going and seeking education diplomas. Look at the stats of 10 years ago, how many young people were going into education and what it looks like now. It is dismal. A lot of the reasons is because of what I just stated, or their relatives who are in the business and saying, don't do this. It's so bad for us right now. USF for a while, you know, ended their education program because they just didn't have people to fill the seats. So as a country, I'm too close. So as a country, we have to value teachers and what they do. We have to value education. I'm not sure when that's, you know, the social war started on our education and especially our teachers. Our teachers love kids. They come from every walk of life. So I think with any field, when people feel valued, when we train superintendents, when we train our leadership to make their staff feel valued, and I think that's something we've seen and worked on. And I always say, maybe we didn't give them the tools, maybe they don't have all the tools, maybe they don't feel supported where they are. But I have 14, 16 different schools in between Auburndale and North Lakeland. And I can tell you the schools where the teachers are there for decades. It has a lot to do with how we train those leaders. And so I know we're implementing some new programs. We're allowing teachers avenues to make more money without leaving the classroom. We have principals who are I'm just gonna plug Lake Gibson. We have principals that are doing amazing jobs like Brian Van and other great principals that we have coaching other principals who may have not had the tools or don't remember the toolbox they were given. Because you can tell from school to school the teachers that feel valued. So I think that's the reason we see a fluctuation in people going into education.
Kim, I'd like to add to that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So much to Ms. Miller's point, even beyond feeling valued, the profession as a general rule over the last 24 years that I've been in public education has changed significantly. You know, as others have pointed out, my colleagues on the panel, the person coming to the profession has also changed. We do not have College of Ed graduates who understand the methods of instruction or understand the psychology of an elementary age student or a middle school student. We're getting second, third career individuals coming into education. And I think that's driven some of the standardization because there's a fear there. If they're not trained properly, the best solution is to standardize it so that they have the support and the networks that they have. But it's been overutilized. This started with A Nation at Risk. When that report was published, because across America, corporations were saying that we were not turning out a quality product, it triggered school reform. That is arguably the F word in education. Then we lightened it up and we softened it by calling it school transformation, but it was reform. And it started there, and it's been over several decades where we have continually eroded public perception of public education. We create systems that are inequitable, that don't create an equal playing ground for individuals. And the reality of it is, there's 7,000 projected vacancies in the state of Florida. That's not just because people don't feel valued, and it's not just because of the salaries. It's because people don't value the profession any longer. And there are far too many other competing professions where they can have a larger earning potential. And I joke about this all the time, that I don't tell my teachers about Nucor, the steel manufacturer that's out on the east side of our school district. They make $110,000 a year manufacturing rebar. But we pay teachers $47,500? We have lost sight of what matters in education. And yes, there's been far too much with high stakes accountability. And I am accountability, I do believe in it. Because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that students are performing, and that when we graduate a student, that diploma means something. It's not a completion certificate that you fulfilled just seat time. It's that you can leave school with the skills to be successful, whether you choose to go to college, go into a trade, or go into the military. Whatever you choose to do, you've got those skills. And so that helped drive some of that, because corporations and generally we weren't seeing that. And we had dropout factories. There's a reality to how we got here, but it's been overrepresented. And I'll tell you this right now, standardized assessment data, we are in the best possible place in the state of Florida right now than we've ever been, because at least now we have 3 assessment windows, instead of relying on 1 test day to evaluate a student. But here's where I'll tell you it continues to fail. Because right now, there are people who will say, well, the algebra passing rate in Polk County for 9th and 10th graders is only 25%. That's true. How many or what percentage of our students actually take algebra and pass it in 7th and 8th grade? Almost 3,000 kids out of a cohort of 7,000 take it in 7th and 8th grade. Our passing rate for algebra, a high school course in 7th grade, is 90%. The passing rate for 8th grade is around 82%. That's why our average is around 86%. And then you get to high school, and so students who are struggling with math, and there's no excuse for that, because quite honestly, they should have the basic skills to be able to be successful in algebra. But a lot of the data is misrepresented. But here's what's interesting. The same kids who can't pass the algebra test and the same kids who aren't passing the statewide literacy test, 86% of those kids graduate because they pass the SAT or the ACT with concordance score. So what's more likely? Our kids are not literate in reading and mathematics, or there's some error in the assessment? And that's the argument we need to make. If you look at the cut scores and scale scores in public education, this is what diminishes teachers. 60% of the point range for how students are scored, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, are within the level 1 and level 2 designation. We are already predisposing students to be in the lowest level of performance. 60% of the available points to a student when they take that test are within level 1, level 2. It's the same thing as a regular grading scale. 50%, you have to get a 50 to get it to, or basically a 60 to get a D to pass, correct? So we skew the scale disproportionately. And we have this expectation that every kid can read by 3rd grade. And I will tell you this right now, my position is far more of our kids are reading on grade level than we believe. But the truth is, as Ms. Fields and others have pointed out, this test in its previous form did not adequately evaluate our students. And so my hope is that as we transition to this new assessment process, that number one, teachers will get the information they need to make adjustments within their classrooms. And I think that does feed into the autonomy that you heard about earlier, because teachers need to make decisions with these students with real-time data so that they can adjust their instruction. Who needs to be in small group? Who do I need to touch base with individually? How do I do whole group instruction? And for the kids who are on grade level, how do I accelerate and enrich them? That's the part of the conversation we keep leaving out of this narrative as well. We keep focusing on the lowest quartile instead of working at how are we working with these bubble kids and the kids who are accelerating. And so there's a lot to this, but I just wanted to make sure I highlighted those because Ms. Miller is absolutely correct. The research, when you look at surveys about teachers leaving the profession, salary usually is number 5. Politics of education, diminishment of the profession, lack of parental engagement and respect. Those are the key, and leadership, have to own the leadership piece. Those are the top 4 that you typically see listed. So I'm sorry I went on, but there's a lot to this. I mean, really, every question you've asked tonight, we should just have a separate forum on, so.
I think we have time for one more question, and that is going to go to Ms. Fields. Parents are their children's first teacher. What can parents do to ensure that their children are learning?
Wow. That's a heavy loaded question. First thing that I would say is make sure that their kids go to school each and every day, that they are present. Kids cannot learn, students cannot learn if they're not present. Make sure that they're on time. If they're late, they're missing something. So that would be one of the biggest things. The other factor is a parent must be their child's strongest advocate. Kids can't speak for themselves. Some try, but when they do, it causes a lot of conflict. So I always tell the girls at Girls Inc., if you have an issue, let your parents fight your battle. You don't need to fight it. So the parents need to be present. They need to make sure that they are in communication with the teachers, teacher, depending on what grade they're in. And they need to find a way to connect, to volunteer in the classroom. That is now possible for them to do. And then I think one of the things I was talking to Superintendent Heid about is some parents just don't know what to do. So what do we do to help them? We need to have workshops. We need to have seminars where we can show them, okay, this is how you go into the portal. Believe it or not, a lot of parents don't know how to go into the portal. They don't know their child's password. They think it might be Jimmy John and it might be Susie Q. They don't know. So they don't have an opportunity to go into the portal to see, is she on target with math? Is she doing what she needs to do in reading? Is she getting her homework done? What are her grades? So that if there are issues, they can deal with those issues up front and not wait until the last part of the school year, even though they get report cards, and Superintendent Heid and I've talked about that too. A lot of parents don't have access to the computer, so they're not able to even get their child's report card because report cards now are not given to them. A lot of them, in hard copies, you have to go on the computer. And a lot of parents don't have computers, they don't have a printer, okay? I also mentioned to Superintendent Heid that my daughter is in the Orange County Public School District, and I have a granddaughter. She's in 3rd grade. And they launched a program this school year. It's called the Parent Academy. And this is on a Saturday. They can bring their kids. They have childcare for them. They have activities for them. And then they have specific areas that can help parents to be a stronger parent. And some of the things that they do is they cover helping your child transition to kindergarten, middle school, or high school, student discipline, participating in parent-teacher conferences. A lot of parents don't know what to do when it's an opportunity to go and sit down with the teacher. They don't know what to say. They don't know what questions to ask. And helping students develop literacy skills and even using the opportunity of talking with the administrators of the various schools. And then lastly, that I would say is the importance of reading cannot be understated. Every child should read at least 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes a day. The impact that reading can make can even be described, in my opinion. But should the child just be reading by themselves? No. The parents should be reading too, and making sure that whatever the child likes to read, that those books are available. Don't force them to read something that they're not interested in. Let them choose. Take them to the library. Buy them some books. We have book fairs at school. Those are some of the things that I would say that should really help the child to be successful, because at the end of the day, what I say all the time is, for many of us and for many of our students, education is the only way out. The only way out of what? The only way out of poverty. Education is the only way out.
I think that's a great note to end on. I know, Lisa, you've got more to say, but we do want to make sure there's time for audience Q&A. So while you guys are thinking about your question, I have to say one other thing first, because I will admit, my stage fright got to me earlier, and I forgot to do the part of my job that I absolutely love doing, which is giving gratitude to all of the people who helped make an evening like tonight happen, including our panel, if we can get a big round of applause for them. But I also need to give a big thank you to our financial sponsors, Team Mims Corp., International Diamond Source, and the United Way of Central Florida, who helps us do all of this and for free. And huge thank you to the Florida Children's Museum and Carrie Falwell and her entire staff for our amazing venue tonight. And yes, thank you. Yeah. And one more shout out for Laura Rodriguez and the Lakeland Vision Board, who will be handling kind of the second half of this event, but they are a fantastic partner and also help us do all of this for free. Oh, sorry, one more. I want to thank our amazing live stream team. So we get by with a little help from our friends all of the time, and today, because this is an education forum, we thought we'd make this an educational opportunity. So we have Professor Dave Sperling here from Florida Southern College and 3 of his students who are helping with the live stream. So give them a big round of applause. Okay, questions. Raise your hands. I'm coming to you. I saw you first in the black cardigan.
Thinking about the assessment that was just done by United Way and our growth that's projected over the next 3 to 5 years specifically, and how massive it is, and the largest number of that student body, or of that population size being under the age of 18. What are the things that we're doing to meet the needs of those students school-wise, especially given the fact that we have less and less resources financially?
So we're really approaching it through multiple strategies. And I'm assuming you're talking about seats and availability of space first and foremost. We are very fortunate that we do get impact fees and we do generate some of our local sales tax and property tax revenue. So today we've been very fortunate that Polk County owns multiple school sites because we anticipated growth. And so we've been very fortunate to be able to pay cash for a lot of our buildings, and then we have the half-penny sales tax that's allowing us to renovate many of our older buildings, and we're very appreciative to the taxpayers for that. The problem has been costs have increased significantly. I'll use Davenport High School as the best example. When we built Davenport High School, and I arrived here my first year, that school was completed and we were opening it. That school cost the school district $110 million. That exact floor plan right now, not including the land, was 110. It's now estimated at $200 million. So because of COVID, because of other issues, costs have skyrocketed, inflation and everything else with it. So our dollars don't go as far. So we have to be innovative. We have partnered with one entity that the board was very willing to try, where we lease to own. And we're going to see how that concept proves out for us. Where essentially the benefit to the district is I didn't have to borrow, and it doesn't impact our bond rating, it doesn't impact our debt level, our debt ceiling, and we pay $2 million, just over $2 million a year. We'll own the building after 20 years, but for the first time in our district's history, that part of that money goes into an escrow account, and that the roof will be replaced if we take ownership of it. It replaces all the major mechanicals, the water fountains, 2 paint jobs throughout the life expectancy of that project. So it's a very different approach. And this group has built charter schools, so we have to be innovative in that regard. We're also building and being strategic in how we're expanding schools. You've seen us expand schools over the last 2 years, very much appreciative of the board's support. I'm a big proponent for K-8s and 6-12 campuses. The longer you can keep a student on a campus, the better relationships we can establish with them and with our staff. We don't lose that continuum of education because students are transitioning from elementary to middle to high. And so we have added on to Bellicita, we've expanded McLaughlin, which is now a 6-12 campus, and we've been very innovative and creative in that way to create new seats in areas where we're seeing high demand. The last one is rezoning, and we are comprehensively rezoning the school district. The board will see, and they've received some preliminary data on high school recommendations. High school's a little easier to rezone initially, and then we'll bring the recommendations for elementary and middle school. The board will not vote on this anytime soon. The board will approve the recommendation for me to bring it to the community. And then we'll spend several months in the community getting feedback. Unlike what Hillsborough County did, ours is not a forced transition. So your child will be able to finish out their term at their existing school versus being told you have to relocate in the middle of your elementary years to another site. But that's the only way we're going to address this, because if my only solution is to build new schools, then we're going to have all these schools on the east and west side of the school district. I keep calling it love handles. We're getting fat on both sides of the district because that's where the enrollment's from, and that's the reality for us. So new construction can't be our only solution. We have several schools that are underutilized, and rezoning is a better solution for them. But here's the issue with rezoning. We have to make sure that parents feel comfortable and confident that their child will receive a quality education at those schools. And some of this, as Ms. Miller pointed out earlier, is due to the fact that we have so many magnet academy programs that school choice has been a huge benefit to many, but it's been at our own detriment in some of our schools and communities because there's been so much flight from those schools. So again, we have to make sure we bolster those schools with programs that are highly attractive and interested for parents and students at the same time that we're expanding and we're addressing this. So it's a very comprehensive approach to how we're managing our growth. And we've modified our formula. For years, our formula looked at the number of bedrooms in a home, and we could typically project with a high confidence level how many students we could expect from that home, except the economy changed. And so now we're seeing multiple families living within a single dwelling, and that altered how many students we were generating. And Citrus Ridge Academy is the best example of that. Citrus Ridge was originally opened to be at 80% occupancy. It opened over, if I recall correctly, 120% occupancy because so many people moved into the area and we had so many families sharing residences, we could never accurately predict that. So we ended up having to put multiple portables on that brand new campus as a result. So we have modified our formula, and I've listed the other strategies that we're using.
Hello, my name is Josie Arias. I'm an elementary school teacher. This is my 18th year. And I just feel as teachers, we never feel heard. And the fact that you guys have your school board meetings where middle school teachers are still teaching, and I was thinking of a solution would be either to do it on early release days or maybe on a Saturday, because it seems that all the people that are attending haven't even been in a classroom in 50 years. And so, and they're up there saying what we're doing in the classrooms, which is totally wrong. And how are we being brought to the table if we can't even make it there in time?
So a couple things, if I may.
If I can help with
Absolutely,
that.
please.
I love that idea. I love the idea of maybe having it on a Saturday or maybe having it on a different evening. I don't know, but I agree with you 100%. We hear all the time about we need real teachers. But what's a real teacher? Tell me. You haven't been in the classroom. You don't know what a real teacher is. You think you do. So yes, I think it would be great. I think the more voices we hear, the more opinions we hear, the better decisions we can make. We're supposed to listen, and we're supposed to make the best decisions for our students and for our families and for our employees. So I think that's an excellent idea. What do you think, Mr. Heid?
Ma'am, I work for you, so. I would point out, though, none of our meetings take place while teachers are teaching, other than the workshop. The board does not vote during the workshop. That's when information items are presented to them that they later vote on. But to ensure that everybody has access to that information, we do tape all those meetings, and we publish them. It is difficult, because there is a demand of time for staff and others that have to be parties to those meetings. If the board wants to explore other options as far as moving board meetings later, posting them on early release days, but teachers are still working on early release days for professional development and other opportunities.
But we don't really have the opportunity, like, there are times that I'm either at a conference or I'm doing something, and by the time it's like 3:30, I didn't leave school till like 5 o'clock today. And that happens at the beginning of the year. I teach
Sure.
kindergarten. It doesn't happen until, in October that, I can breathe again. But it's just really hard to make it all the way to Bartow before, and especially with these groups that are already making their plans and posting on Facebook that they're going to have like 50 people there. We're voiceless at this time, and I think that is a very big frustration. With 18 years in, I've never seen these Facebook groups of Polk County teachers that are so disillusioned with the profession in general.
So let me address the other part about teacher voice, and I'm disappointed you don't know about this. So every year since I've been here, we've established collaborative councils. The union, PEA, puts out a broadcast every single year. In fact, it's either going out this month or next month, asking for volunteers. And that's exactly what you do. They have it for every single school level. We have it for exceptional student education. We have it for early childhood. We have it for extracurriculars. We have it for academies. And it consists of staff, school-based staff, and district administrators and or school-based administrators, equal numbers. And the purpose of that is to look at existing policies and practices, make recommendations for potential change, or to look at new innovative strategies that we're going to propose to the board and provide feedback. That opportunity has existed for the past 2 years, and I'll talk to PEA about making sure they advertise it, but I know Stephanie Yoakum puts that out there every year, and we do staff those collaborative councils. And it's an important part, and I brought that to Polk County because we wanted to get that feedback, because that's always been the frustration. This perception that ideas or concepts are developed and are rolled out from the ivory tower without teacher input, and that's completely false. So the collaborative councils provide that voice, that nexus to the classroom teachers and or school-based staff to make sure that we're getting that feedback and we're able to address concerns in real time.
No, I want to say that this would be a board decision, and there's only 2 board members here, so we probably can't keep talking about it. But I think we should have the conversation, even if it's not every meeting. I've always been in favor of more than 1 meeting a month, but that's another board decision because we get so backed up with decisions that have to be made. But making it available even across the county. People don't drive from Davenport to Bartow. That needs to be, this gentleman has driven from Davenport to Lakeland today, but we need to start having the conversation, and we've done it in the past.
Well, we
moved
used to
Jim
do that,
Miles.
yeah.
So that needs to be a board conversation that I think that it's time to have, because you're right, if you only watch those YouTube videos, it does not represent Polk County or even our citizens, much less our staff.
Hi, I'm going to add a little bit of a topic, but Ms. Miller addressed it earlier a bit. I come as a professional and a parent.
Can you take the mic up closer?
Oh, okay. I usually talk too loud. I come as a professional and a parent. Prior to our move to Florida, I worked in the public schools as a special educator and a speech therapist. I have 2 children who are teenagers now with special needs. They attend one of our private schools specifically for their needs. My question is, of the 6 years we have been here, Polk County has made the choice, federal law says they are not required to, but can make the choice to provide services to the private schools. It has been so far tutoring and speech therapy. In those 5 years, my children have missed approximately 2 years of speech therapy, umpteenth times of tutoring. Currently, my oldest child's 3-year reevaluation was due in November of 2021. So all that to say, we know there is an issue. I come as an ally to say, what can I as a parent, what can the schools, the public schools and the private schools do to better connect? Because who's missing out are all of our children and their services.
No, this is something that I've talked to the superintendent about. We do have to provide services. We have to vote on what they'll be, and they usually end up being speech language, because that seems to be from the community what's needed. It's also where we have the biggest deficit in providers. We have, and I'll let the superintendent speak to this, we've had multiple conversations on how to do that. I've been in contact with a Winter Haven private school right now who's trying to seek providers, because we're not able, we want them to be approved providers. We don't want the grifters to come and then your children not receive appropriate therapy. So this is a big problem across the state. The last time I was in Tallahassee, I was told they were working on a plan. I haven't seen the plan. I keep asking him every time he goes if they told him the plan. Especially with speech. Speech is the biggest deficit as far as providers that we have. But the superintendent can talk to, if he chooses, on on what we're doing for this, because there's a huge gap for public and private. But we're hearing from the private schools because of the lack of providers. Our providers are overwhelmed in the public schools, so we're missing therapies just based on limited staff that we have. So superintendent.
I guess, and of course, as a
Yes.
school speech therapist, I know, and I can go on and on about probably why speech therapists are not working in schools. It kind of gets back to the teacher,
Right.
talk about that. But I guess what is happening, or what has been happening to the funding that has been provided to the public schools for, my children and children that are supposed to be receiving these services, and the private schools don't have the funding now because of that. Is something being done to where the private schools can, how are we going to?
There's an issue with messaging. I'll let the superintendent, because I just had this from a private school saying that we were told it's indefinitely on hold. The funding is there, and the superintendent's going to explain how that works.
So the funding is there, but historically this has not been an issue because private schools and charter schools have gone out and contracted their own employees. Now that there's a shortage and we can't adequately support our students, whether it be in public schools or in private settings, is becoming a question. The school district, anybody can piggyback off of our contracts who are currently within Polk County. So we have contracts with multiple entities because there is no single provider that can provide us the level of SLP support that we need. SLPs are non-existent right now, not necessarily because of the profession. I'm going to push back gently on that. There are multiple colleges and universities that no longer even provide that coursework. and they have closed their doors. SLPs have also largely migrated to telehealth and teletherapy because the earning potential is greater and the convenience of working remotely and from home. And that's unfortunate. That's a great skill set. I don't diminish people, anybody who's fortunate enough to work from home. Wish I could work from home. But that's part of the issue. And so our solution is going to have to be more creative like we just did with guidance counselors. We created multiple pathways for counseling services now because the certifications weren't there. And so what we're doing right now with SLPs, and understand it comes at a huge cost to the district. There's typically a 30 to almost 40% markup depending on which area you're talking about, OT, PT, speech language, where we pay a markup above what we would normally pay our staff. So we're actually using two strategies right now. I'm taking a 5-year analysis of how much we paid in contracted services, and we're going to see if we were to take that same amount of money that we're already spending and put it into the salary schedule, would that bring in more?
Mr. Heid,
Yes.
sorry, I'm going to cut you off
Okay.
politely, hopefully. We have time for about maybe 2 more questions, and I just want to make sure we give everybody an opportunity. So,
Hi, Octavio Hernandez, Davenport school teacher. You guys know I have been going to the school board meetings for about 2 years now. It takes me an hour to get there because of traffic. The reason I go there is because of that. We can't defend ourselves. Our teachers can't defend themselves watching it on TV. They see all these people going there and yelling and screaming of stuff that's not happening in the classroom. Meanwhile, we're suffering. We're worrying with 31 class sizes. We have a 22-minute lunch, which is ridiculous. You tell me a job that we have less than 30 minutes for lunch, people. Your kids only have 22 minutes to eat. So when they come home hungry, it's not their fault, and that is something that we can control. And that is good for their mental health. You're expecting these kids to come to school, work nonstop, and have a 22-minute lunch. That is not a healthy work environment. But in terms of moving so we can have a voice, because the union represents certain things. But there's issues out there that we all have. Polk County is such a vast variety of different people. And you know that, Superintendent. And I actually absolutely love what you did last year when you guys jumped around, from town to town with those little town hall meetings, because it shows to the community that you care and you're trying to reach out to us. We're in freaking Lakeland, man. It's an hour and a half to get home right now. I get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to school, and I'm still here for my students. Because you're right, we're not quitting because of the money. We're not quitting. So ask yourself, why are we quitting? We're quitting because we don't have a freaking voice. Because we're tired of other people going to in front of the cameras and saying stuff that's not happening. And if you want to make people stay, how about we have a better work environment? Those learning arcs are pain in the ass. I'm sorry, but that's the way you got to put it. Done. We want to have some kind of control in our classroom. And in terms of the lunch, our teachers have to decide whether they want to have a lunch or they have to use the bathroom on those block days. 22 minutes. Thank God I'm not a woman at this point, because I would hate to have my menstrual cycle and have to decide what I'm going to do. Sorry, but that's the truth. So that doesn't cost money. That's nothing from the state. That is something that we can work on here locally. But again, did you hear that from me? No, because I can't come here all the time. It's difficult for me to get here. I have to sacrifice my time, my life, my money just to come here to speak my voice of what's happening in my community. Now, I don't know what's happening on the other side of Polk, but I know they have issues too. And by doing these meetings and moving around, I think it's a great idea for us to get our voices heard. Because yes, the union does represent us, but they don't hear all of us. And when you do those group meetings, that's to help like what's going on in the classroom. But what's going on with that social factor between the students and the teachers? Now, I know you said we're worrying about our students, but where are they getting their knowledge from? Where are they getting educated from? From us. And if we go to work pissed off because we don't want to work, how do you think we're going to do our job? Mm-hmm. Every day I have to put music and pump myself, and my students ask me every day, Mr. Hernandez, why do you come so awake at 6 in the morning? Would you rather me come here angry and upset? That's it. But can we have longer lunches and meetings? Thank you.
okay. Can we have longer lunches and can we move the meetings? I don't know if you want to respond to the can we have longer lunches question.
So again, that's a topic that collaborative counselors are actually doing their research on, and they're going to make recommendations for what the more appropriate school calendar and schedule should look like. So that's an ongoing process. And again, we're empowering those teachers to have that voice and provide input there. As it relates to learning arcs, I'll disagree with you. When we get to a place where 80% of our students are scoring on grade level, we can have an honest conversation about learning arcs. Until that time, we need to continue to focus to make sure that the lessons that are being delivered in classrooms are at the appropriate level of rigor and are aligned to the standards, not aligned to what I prefer to teach, but what I need to teach to ensure that students are successful. So So I understand some of the frustrations surrounding learning arts, but that's part of our professional practice. How do we share information? So.
Okay. We have time for one more question. And do we have a question? Okay. Miss Sarah Fortney, I'm coming over to you.
Sarah Fortney. Hey. For those who don't know, Sarah Fortney is a former school board member.
I just want to know if you have any idea how much money we will lose to super vouchers, if any, and when we'll have a dedicated amount that we have lost from our fund, general fund. Thank you.
That's a good question. Superintendent Heid, you would know that.
All right. Does anyone want to take that one?
Right, so we have not seen a large number of our families take advantage of vouchers because our enrollment continues to decline. In addition to that, vouchers require that there be available seats. And what we have found is there are not a large number of available seats in private settings. In addition to that, some of the private institutions actually raised their tuition the exact amount of the voucher. And I won't name names, but some of them did. And so there's a reality here that vouchers, we can get a number. We projected when we did last year's budget, we actually had to inform the board of what we anticipated losing and how the state was actually creating an additional funding source so that schools would not be harmed after the allocation period. And so I can get that information and show you how many new students, because I believe the window is closed. And so we should start get that, but we have been hearing increasingly from family, I know Ms. Miller hears this more than I do, but that families who have applied have not heard anything yet about their voucher application. So it may not be a completely accurate number.
Is that Step Up? That's who they apply to, Step Up? There's two. There's a AAA or something, but Step Up is the largest. They have to fund the homeschool and the vouchers by September, I think so many days before September 15th. So we would know as of now. What would be interesting to chart is how many come back mid-year or at that second year. And it's not always it's not students going to, I don't say legitimate, it's not going to historical private schools that are performing very well. It's the startup schools that financially don't anticipate the impact, and they open and then they close. Or they open and they promise to meet the needs of a variety of students. Mm-hmm. They take the students in and realize that they cannot. So they come back to us with the same need, but the funding is very different. So we have to eat that lapse of funding. And that's always been the argument. They did help us with the state. They stopped cutting the checks once a year, and they cut them in shorter amount of time, so at least we get some of it back. But for the students that return in that 1 year, mostly students who need support, either behavior or academic, the funding is, we get less funding to match that support need. But we should have that soon, and I would like the superintendent and staff to track. I'm not sure how we would do that unless we're just tracking where they're coming from as they come back, because usually when they come back to us, they're further behind from when they left.
Well, okay, I just want to, this is going to end our sort of panel discussion here, but please, I'm hoping everyone will stay. There's so much passion, there is so much expertise in this room, and we, in a moment, are going to take about a 10-minute break, and we can get some snacks and do all of that. But the second part of this, which will go only until about 8:30, is actually a chance for you guys to all break out into small group sessions and to sit at a table with a board member from Lakeland Vision and give your feedback and let your voices be heard. So we would really love to get that from you guys and stay, but we will take a break. But before we do, I just want to say thank you once again to our moderator, Kimberly Moore. Our incredible panelists, Lois Horn-Diaz. Kay Fields, our longest serving school board member. Lisa Miller, also school board member. And Superintendent Fredrick Heid. And I really can't stress enough that everyone here, they give their time to come here and do this and be accessible for you. And that is why we host these events. You know, we are a news organization, but we see our job as journalists as being the facilitators of a dialogue between the community and the people who are in the power of decision making. So I'm really glad we could do that for you here tonight. And with that, let's get something to drink and something to eat.
Well, it was delightful sitting next to you. This was very nice for the community.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.